In a busy naval facility, a janitor silently cleans up after officers who barely acknowledge him. Most don't even know his name, just another invisible man with a mop. During morning inspection, the visiting SEAL Admiral notices him and decides to have some fun. "What's your rank, soldier?" he asks with a smirk, room erupting in laughter. The janitor pauses, looks directly at the Admiral, and replies with calm precision, "Major General." The laughter stops instantly. Every face freezes in shock, because in that moment, they realized they had been mocking the kind of soldier they could only dream of becoming. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story of hidden greatness resonates with you, subscribe for more tales of extraordinary people hiding in plain sight. The mop moved in rhythmic precision across the polished floor, guided by weathered hands that knew every crack and corner of the Naval Special Warfare Command facility. Thorne Calloway worked in the pre-dawn silence, his movements mechanical yet purposeful. Outside, the Virginia sky remained dark, but inside, fluorescent lights illuminated empty corridors where men of power would soon walk without noticing him. He preferred these hours. Before the facility filled with naval officers who looked through him rather than at him, before the weight of invisibility settled on his shoulders for another day. A door opened at the far end of the hallway. Commander Ellis emerged, already dressed in crisp uniform despite the early hour. He walked directly through the section Thorne had just cleaned, leaving wet footprints across the polished surface. "Morning," Thorne said, the greeting more habit than expectation. Commander Ellis glanced up from his phone, eyes passing over Thorne without recognition, and continued walking. No response, not even the courtesy of acknowledgement. Thorne returned to his work, adjusting his path to recapture the sullied floor section. His reflection gazed back at him from the polished surface. Gray hair cropped close to his scalp, deep lines around eyes that revealed nothing. Just another aging janitor in standard-issue gray coveralls with maintenance embroidered above the pocket. Invisible by design. In the men's restroom, Thorne methodically checked each stall, restocking supplies with practiced efficiency. The sound of laughter filtered through the door, moments before it swung open, admitting 3 junior officers. "I'm telling you, Blackwood is coming to clean house," one said, his voice carrying the casual arrogance of youth and rank. "The Admiral doesn't do courtesy inspections." "Promotion opportunities," another replied, adjusting his uniform in the mirror without acknowledging Thorne's presence. "Career maker if you catch his eye." The third officer nudged his companion, finally noticing Thorne. "Speaking of cleaning house," he smirked, "our friend here might need extra supplies. Heard Blackwood makes people scrub toilets with toothbrushes if they fail inspection." Laughter rippled between them as Thorne continued working, face impassive. When they left, he approached the mirror they'd been using and noticed the fresh graffiti etched into its corner. "Janitors, Jaralpa's failed heroes." His expression remained unchanged as he reached for cleaning solution, but his movements became more deliberate, more precise. He removed all traces of the etched words, his reflection staring back at him with eyes that revealed nothing of the thoughts behind them. By 0600, the facility hummed with activity. Officers moved with increasing purpose, the news of Admiral Blackwood's impending inspection creating a current of nervous energy. Thorne pushed his cart along the edge of the command center, where tension radiated from the cluster of officers surrounding a digital display. "We have an emerging situation," Captain Reeves announced, gesturing to a map with several blinking indicators. "Intelligence reports possible hostile movement near our forward operating base. We need contingency planning now." Thorne kept his eyes down, emptying trash bins while the officers debated response options. Their voices rose with competing strategies, none gaining traction. "If we deploy air support here," one officer argued, pointing to the eastern quadrant, "we risk diplomatic complications with the host nation." "Without air support, our people are vulnerable," countered another. Thorne moved his cleaning cart, positioning it so the handle subtly pointed toward the western approach on the map, a narrow valley offering cover while avoiding the contested airspace. Captain Reeves paused, his eyes catching the unconscious visual cue. "What about coming in from the west? The valley provides natural cover, and it's outside the restricted zone." The room shifted as officers considered the suggestion. None noticed as Thorne quietly collected the final trash bin and slipped from the room. Only Lieutenant Adira Nasser, standing at the periphery of the group, tracked his exit with curious eyes. She had noticed the subtle adjustment of the cleaning cart. the invisible suggestion that had changed the captain's thinking. Later that morning, as Thorne wiped down the glass display cases containing the facility's military honors, Lieutenant Nasser approached. "Mr. Calloway, isn't it?" she asked, studying his name tag. Thorne nodded without pausing his work. "Yes, ma'am. That was impressive situational awareness in the command center earlier." His hand stilled momentarily before resuming its circular motion on the glass. "Just cleaning around the important work, ma'am. You positioned your cart to point at the western approach." "Didn't notice, ma'am. Just staying out of the way." Nasser leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You know, I served under a Commander Calloway early in my career. Any relation?" "Common name, ma'am." Thorne moved to the next display case, his back to her. "Not that common," she replied, watching him carefully. This Commander Calloway had a gift for spatial awareness, could read a tactical situation faster than anyone I've ever seen. Thorne continued cleaning, offering nothing. "He disappeared from service records about 15 years ago," she added. "No retirement announcement, no ceremony, just gone." "Military bureaucracy," Thorne said, closing the display case. "Things get lost." "People don't," Nasser countered. "Not decorated officers." Thorne finally turned to face her, his expression neutral. "Was there something you needed help with, Lieutenant? Maintenance issue?" Nasser studied him for a long moment before straightening. "No, not right now. Thank you, Mr. Calloway." She walked away, but Thorne knew the encounter wasn't over. Questions once asked rarely disappeared on their own, particularly from officers with sharp eyes and sharper minds. The sun had set by the time Thorne walked the 3 blocks from the facility to the modest apartment building he called home. His shoulders, rigidly straight inside the facility, now carried the genuine weight of long hours and physical labor. He climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, listening for the familiar sounds of his son before even opening the door. Inside, Emery sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and notepads filled with complex equations. At 17, he had his mother's intelligent eyes and analytical mind. The boy looked up as Thorne entered, offering a quick smile before returning to his work. "Advanced physics again?" Thorne asked, moving to the refrigerator. "Quantum mechanics," Emery corrected. "Mrs. Lenworth thinks I should apply for the summer program at MIT. Thorne nodded, pride briefly softening his weathered features. "You should. Need family history for this other project," Emery said, gesturing to a separate folder. "Military service specifically. Mrs. Lenworth wants to recognize Veterans Day with a display about families with service traditions." Thorne kept his back to his son as he removed ingredients for dinner. "Tell her we don't have any." "Everyone has something," Emery pressed. "Grandparents, great-grandparents. Even Zane's anti-war family had a conscientious objector they could write about." "Not everyone," Thorne responded, his tone ending the conversation. They ate dinner with the practiced conversation of people who share space but guard secrets. Emery discussed school, his upcoming college applications, the physics competition his team had entered. Thorne listened, offering encouragement and practical advice while revealing nothing of his own day. After dinner, while Thorne washed dishes, Emery entered his father's bedroom to borrow a calculator from the desk drawer. As he rummaged through the neatly organized contents, his fingers brushed against a frame lying face down at the back of the drawer. Curious, he withdrew it. A military photograph, partially obscured by a service award citation. Before he could examine it, closely Thorne appeared in the doorway. Their eyes met, and the unspoken boundary between them materialized like a physical barrier. "Some doors stay closed to keep what's inside safe," Thorne said quietly. Emery returned the photo to the drawer, understanding less about the specific secret than the importance of its protection. "Sorry, Dad, just looking for the graphing calculator." "Top desk drawer," Thorne replied, his voice softening. "Always in the same place. Like everything in their carefully ordered lives." Later that night, after Emery had gone to bed, Thorne stood in their small bathroom, staring at his reflection. He removed his shirt, revealing a torso mapped with scars, some surgical, others jagged and traumatic. Beneath the markers of old wounds, the body still held the disciplined muscle of military training, carefully disguised by loose-fitting maintenance coveralls during working hours. His fingers traced a particular scar that ran along his left side, his mind traveling back to a mission gone wrong, to the sound of helicopter rotors and the metallic taste of blood. To the last time he'd worn a uniform with pride rather than hidden shame. To the night, everything changed. He pushed the memories away, slipping on a plain t-shirt before returning to the kitchen. From a locked box high in a cabinet, he removed a worn leather journal. Inside, pasted to the first page, was a newspaper clipping, "Naval Commander Decorated for Heroism," the headline read. The accompanying photo showed a younger Thorne in dress uniform, standing at attention while receiving a medal. Below it, another headline, dated 2 months later. "Naval Officer's Wife Killed in Accident, Foul Play Suspected." Thorne closed the journal, returning it to its hiding place. Some histories could never be shared, even with those you love most, especially with those you love most. The facility buzzed with anticipation the following morning. Admiral Blackwood's inspection was scheduled for 0800 the next day, and preparations had reached a fever pitch. Officers who normally ignored the maintenance staff now scrutinized every surface, finding fault with even the most meticulously cleaned areas. "This isn't acceptable," Commander Ellis barked, pointing to a barely perceptible smudge on a display case Thorne had cleaned twice already. "Blackwood will notice every detail. Every flaw reflects on this entire command." "Yes, sir," Thorne replied, immediately addressing the issue. "And the restrooms need complete sanitization. Every surface should shine." "Completed at 0500, sir. I can do them again." Ellis looked at him directly for perhaps the first time, irritation clear in his expression. "Then why am I still finding issues? Do you understand what's at stake here? Careers can be made or broken tomorrow." "Yes, sir," Thorne repeated, his voice betraying nothing of the irony he felt. "Careers made and broken indeed." As Ellis walked away, Lieutenant Nasser approached, having overheard the exchange. "Commander Ellis is feeling the pressure," she said, keeping her voice low. "Blackwood has a reputation for using these inspections to identify who rises and who falls in the command structure." "Sounds stressful," Thorne replied noncommittally. "Word is Blackwood built his entire career on a single operation 15 years ago," Nasser continued, watching Thorne carefully. "Task Force Hermes, hostage extraction under impossible conditions. The tactical approach he designed is now standard training here." Thorne's cleaning cloth moved in perfect circles, his expression unchanged. "Military history isn't my specialty, ma'am." "The commander who actually led the ground team disappeared from records shortly after," she pressed. "Some say he died, others say he resigned in protest when Blackwood took credit for his strategy." Thorne met her gaze, his eyes revealing nothing. "Sounds complicated." "It was," Nasser agreed. "The official record has been heavily redacted, almost like someone wanted to erase parts of what happened." Before Thorne could respond, commotion erupted at the facility entrance. Admiral Blackwood's advance team had arrived, a day earlier than expected. Officers scattered to their stations as a group of uniformed personnel strode through the main doors. "Preliminary inspection," announced a stern-faced commander. "Admiral Blackwood wants all documentation ready for review by 1800 today." In the chaos that followed, Thorne slipped away from Nasir's probing conversation, focusing instead on his assigned duties. He worked methodically through the afternoon, avoiding areas where Blackwood's team conducted their preliminary assessment. As he cleaned the corridor outside the main conference room, the door opened and several officers emerged, followed by a staff aide carrying folders. The aide, hurrying to keep pace with his superiors, collided with another officer, sending papers scattering across the freshly cleaned floor. "Damn it," the aide muttered, dropping to his knees to gather the documents. Thorne immediately moved to help, collecting papers with efficient movements. As he reached for a particular folder, the label caught his eye. "Operation Hermes Fall, classified." His hand hesitated for a fraction of a second, an almost imperceptible break in his rhythm, but it was long enough for the sharp-eyed Lieutenant Nasser, passing by, to notice the disruption in his usually fluid movements. "Thank you," the aide said, taking the folder from Thorne's outstretched hand without noticing his momentary pause. Thorne nodded, returning to his mop as the corridor cleared. But the image of that folder remained, bringing with it memories he had spent 15 years suppressing, the operation that had cost him everything, the mission that had forced him to become invisible. The day continued with increasing tension as Admiral Blackwood's advance team scrutinized every aspect of the facility. By late afternoon, Exhaustion showed on the faces of officers and enlisted personnel alike. Only Thorne maintained his steady pace, moving through the chaos like a ghost. In the officers' mess hall, he overheard conversations as he cleared tables. Blackwood built his entire career on Hermes, one senior officer remarked to another. Greatest tactical mind in a generation, they say. Not what I heard, his companion replied in a lower voice. My CO at the time said Blackwood wasn't even on the ground, took credit for another commander's work after things went sideways. Career suicide to suggest that, the first warned. Blackwood has the ear of the Secretary of the Navy now. They fell silent as Thorne approached their table, neither acknowledging his presence as he collected their used dishes. To them, he was furniture, present but unnoticed until needed, just as he preferred. The facility emptied gradually as evening approached, with only essential personnel and Blackwood's advanced team remaining. Thorne worked later than usual, ensuring every surface met the exacting standards required for the inspection. As he polished the glass of the military artifacts display case, Lieutenant Nasser approached once more. "You're here late, Mr. Calloway," she observed. "Big day tomorrow," he replied, focusing on a particularly stubborn smudge. "The way you handle those artifacts," she noted, watching as he carefully adjusted a metal display. "Perfect regulation spacing, not something maintenance staff typically knows." Thorne continued working, his movements precise. "Learning by observation, ma'am. Seen it done enough times." "Your file says you've been here 8 years, Nasser said casually. "Before that, various places, nothing interesting." "No military background? You stand like someone who served." Thorne finally paused, meeting her persistent gaze. "Some patterns become habit, Lieutenant, whether you wear stars or push a mop." "Stars?" she repeated, eyes narrowing slightly. Interesting choice of words for someone without military background. Thorne realized his mistake immediately, the casual reference to rank insignia. He resumed cleaning, offering nothing further. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Calloway," Nasser said finally, turning to leave, for the Admiral's inspection. After she departed, Thorne completed his tasks with mechanical efficiency, his mind elsewhere. In 15 years, he had never slipped so noticeably, never revealed even a hint of his former life. The approaching inspection and Blackwood's presence was affecting him more than he wanted to admit. By the time he left the facility, night had fully descended. The 3-block walk to his apartment felt longer than usual, each step weighted with memories he had long suppressed. Inside, he found Emery asleep at the kitchen table, head resting on open textbooks. The scene brought a rare smile to Thorne's weathered face. He gently woke his son, guiding him to proper bed despite sleepy protests. About unfinished assignments. "School's important," Emery mumbled as Thorne helped him to his room. "Need good grades for MIT." "You'll get in," Thorne assured him. "Now sleep." Once Emery was settled, Thorne returned to the kitchen, noticing a military history book open to a page about Navy SEAL operations. His son's research for the Family Military History Project, no doubt. The irony wasn't lost on him. Emery searching historical records for military connections while living with a man who had once commanded elite special operations teams. A man whose name had been systematically removed from official military records to protect both his reputation and his life. Unable to sleep, Thorne stepped onto the small balcony of their apartment. The night air carried the distant sound of traffic and the scent of approaching rain. Perfect conditions for tactical movement, the soldier in him noted automatically. Low visibility, sound dampening, reduced surveillance capability. Some training never faded, no matter how deeply buried. His mind returned to Lieutenant Nasir's probing questions. She was connecting dots he had carefully kept separate for years. If she continued digging, she might uncover truths that remained dangerous, not just to his carefully constructed identity, but to Emery's safety. The thought of his son facing repercussions for a mission gone wrong 15 years ago tightened Thorne's jaw. He had sacrificed everything to keep Emery safe after Catherine's death. His rank, his reputation, his very identity. He would not allow that sacrifice to be undone by an officer's curiosity, no matter how well-intentioned. Inside the apartment, his phone vibrated with a text message. Unusual at this hour. The number was unfamiliar, the message cryptic. "Hermes rises at dawn. Blackwood knows." Thorne deleted the message immediately, his mind racing. Only a handful of people knew the connection between himself and Operation Hermes. Fewer still knew his current identity. Someone from his past was trying to warn him. Blackwood knows. After 15 years of invisibility, Thorne Calloway, once Major General Thorne Calloway, was about to be seen again. In a secure hotel suite across town, Admiral Riker Blackwood reviewed personnel files, his face illuminated by the blue light of a laptop screen. On the display, surveillance footage from the naval facility played, focused on a gray-clad maintenance worker moving methodically through corridors. Blackwood paused the footage, zooming in on the janitor's face. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then to calculating fear. He reached for his secure phone, dialing a private number. "Find everything on the janitor at the Special Warfare Command facility," he ordered without preamble. "Name's Calloway. I need everything before morning." "Sir, preliminary checks show nothing unusual," came the response. 8 years of employment, clean record, no incidents." "Dig deeper," Blackwood insisted. "Military records 15 to 20 years back. Cross-reference with Operation Hermes Fall." A pause on the line. "Sir, those files are sealed by presidential order." "I don't care if they're sealed by God himself," Blackwood hissed. "Find me everything now." As he ended the call, Blackwood stared at the frozen image of Thorne Calloway on his screen. The maintenance worker's face revealed nothing, but Blackwood saw through the careful disguise to the commander he had once betrayed. "Impossible," he whispered to the empty room. "You're supposed to be dead." On his desk lay the open file labeled Hermes Fall, his own medal citation prominently displayed, alongside a newspaper clipping. "Blackwood's brilliant strategy saves hostages, earns presidential commendation." The truth behind that commendation, the real architect of the mission that had launched his meteoric rise, now pushed a mop in the facility he would inspect tomorrow. The knowledge left Blackwood cold with dread and hot with opportunity. If Calloway had maintained this cover for 15 years, he clearly had no intention of reclaiming his former identity, which meant Blackwood's secret remained safe, unless someone started asking questions. Someone like Lieutenant Nasser, whose name had appeared in the facility reports, linked to inquiries about historical operations. Admiral Blackwood closed the laptop. Decision made. Tomorrow's inspection would serve two purposes: maintaining his carefully constructed reputation and ensuring that the janitor remained exactly that. A janitor, invisible, forgotten. The ghost of Thorne Calloway would remain buried, along with the truth of Operation Hermes Fall. In her small office at the naval facility, Lieutenant Adira Nasser worked late into the night, searching classified archives with an access code that stretched the boundaries of her clearance. The screen before her displayed fragments of heavily redacted mission reports, personnel files with entire sections blacked out, and medal citations with names removed. She paused on a partial photograph showing a decorated officer receiving a Congressional Medal of Honor. Though the face was obscured by redaction markers, something about the stance, the set of the shoulders, triggered recognition. Nasser whispered to herself, "Calloway, not a common name." She pulled up the classified operation file, codenamed Hermes Fall, scanning the document for any unredacted information. Commander information had been completely removed, except for a single visible medal citation referencing exemplary leadership. The file noted, "Tactical approach, now standard training at Naval Special Warfare Command." As she continued scrolling, Admiral Blackwood's name appeared as the credited strategist. But something felt wrong about the attribution. The document showed Blackwood received commendation for strategy developed at headquarters, while all information about the ground commander had been systematically erased. Nasir leaned back in her chair, connecting the fragments. A decorated commander who disappeared from records 15 years ago. A maintenance worker with military bearing and tactical awareness who shared the same uncommon name. An operation that made Blackwood's career while another officer vanished from history. "What happened to you, Major General Calloway?" she murmured to the empty room. "And why are you pushing a mop in the building named after your operation?" The answer, she suspected, would become clear when Admiral Blackwood came face to face with the janitor he had replaced in the history books. Whatever truth lay beneath the redacted files, tomorrow's inspection would bring it to the surface. For 15 years, Thorne Calloway had been invisible. Tomorrow, he would be seen. Has there been someone in your life who deserved recognition but never asked for it? Someone who carried their greatness quietly while others took credit for their work? Share your story of an unsung hero in the comments, and subscribe to hear the rest of Thorne Calloway's journey from invisible janitor to the man who made everyone freeze. The morning of Admiral Blackwood's inspection arrived with military precision. 5:30 a.m. exactly, when Thorne Calloway's alarm chirped once before being silenced. He rose immediately, 15 years of civilian life never having erased the soldier's habit of waking fully alert. Outside, darkness still claimed the sky, but within minutes he moved through his apartment with practiced efficiency, preparing for the day that might end his carefully constructed anonymity. In the kitchen, he found Emery already awake, unusual for this hour. The boy sat at the table, military history book open beside a notebook filled with questions. "You're up early," Thorne observed, measuring coffee grounds with the same precision he once used for demolition charges. "Couldn't sleep," Emery replied. "Big physics test today." He hesitated before adding, "And I still need that family military history." Thorne's hand stilled momentarily. "We've discussed this." "I found something," Emery said, sliding a folded newspaper clipping across the table. "Library archives, Mom's obituary." Thorne didn't reach for it, didn't need to. The words had been seared into his memory 15 years ago. Catherine Calloway, wife of decorated naval officer, killed in car accident. Foul play suspected. "It mentions you," Emery continued. "Says you were a commander." "Newspaper mistake," Thorne replied, resuming his coffee preparation. "Was it?" Emery pressed. "Because I cross-reference military decorations with the name Calloway, and there's a weird gap, like someone was erased." Thorne set down a mug of coffee before his son. "Some history isn't meant to be researched, Emery." "Why?" The single word carried the weight of 15 years of carefully deflected questions. Thorne met his son's gaze, seeing Catherine's intelligence and determination reflected back at him. "Because knowing puts you in danger." Before Emery could respond, Thorne's phone vibrated with an automated alert from the facility. "Inspection moved to 0700. All personnel report immediately." "We'll talk tonight," Thorne promised, gathering his things with increased urgency. After the inspection, "Will you tell me the truth?" Emery called as Thorne headed for the door. Thorne paused, one hand on the doorframe. "I've never lied to you, son. I've just kept you safe." The Naval Special Warfare Command facility hummed with frantic activity when Thorne arrived. Officers rushed between stations, barking orders at subordinates. The maintenance staff had been supplemented with additional personnel, all focused on last-minute cleaning and preparation. Facility Director Captain Hargrove intercepted Thorne in the main corridor. "Calloway, redirect to the East Wing conference rooms. Admiral's advance team says they are below standard." "Yes, sir," Thorne replied, changing direction. "And Calloway," Hargrove added, "make it perfect." Blackwood has already found fault with 3 departments. The East Wing held the facility's most sensitive meeting areas, where classified operations were planned and executed. As Thorne pushed his cart through security checkpoints, his presence so familiar even on this tense day that guards barely glanced at his credentials, he noted the increased activity around the command center. Inside the main conference room, he found Lieutenant Nasser supervising the arrangement of presentation materials. She glanced up as he entered, recognition and something else flickering in her eyes. "Mr. Calloway," she acknowledged. "Perfect timing. We need this room immaculate in 20 minutes. Thorne nodded, immediately assessing what needed attention. As he worked, he felt Nasser's gaze following him, measuring his movements against some internal standard. The weight of her suspicion pressed against his carefully maintained facade. "Did you sleep well, Mr. Calloway?" she asked casually. "Well enough, ma'am." "I had trouble sleeping myself," Nasser continued. "Spent most of the night in the archives." Thorne's hands maintained their steady rhythm on the conference table's surface. "Research project?" "You could call it that," she agreed, looking into Operation Hermes Fall. The name hung in the air between them like a live grenade. Thorne continued working, betraying nothing. "Funny thing about military records," Nasser pressed. "Sometimes what's missing tells you more than what's present." "Not my expertise, ma'am." "The ground commander's name has been systematically removed," she continued. "Every citation, every report, every news article amended, like someone tried to erase a person from history." Thorne moved to the windows, cleaning with methodical precision. Sounds like above my security clearance. The thing is, Nasser said, moving closer, redaction leaves traces, cross-references, and there's something else. The commander's wife was killed shortly after the operation. Car accident. Foul play suspected but never proven. Thorne's cleaning cloth paused for a fraction of a second, so brief most would have missed it. But Nasser wasn't most people. Catherine Calloway, she said softly. Not a common surname. Before Thorne could respond, the door swung open and Commander Ellis entered, tension radiating from his rigid posture. Lieutenant Nasser, he snapped, Admiral Blackwood is approaching the East Wing now. Are we prepared? Yes, sir, she replied, straightening to attention. Ellis's gaze swept the room, landing on Thorne with sudden irritation. Why is maintenance still here? Get him out before the Admiral arrives. Sir, he hasn't finished, Nasser began. Out, Ellis repeated. Now. Thorne gathered his supplies without comment, the practiced invisibility settling over him like armor. As he pushed his cart toward the exit, Ellis called after him. And Calloway, make sure the restrooms are immaculate. That's more your appropriate territory. The dismissal carried the casual cruelty of a man asserting dominance without thought, assuming his target had neither the position nor the ability to respond. Thorne accepted it with the same silent dignity he had carried for 15 years, closing the door behind him without a backward glance. In the corridor, he redirected toward the executive restroom as instructed. Through the large windows lining the passage, he could see the black SUVs of the Admiral's motorcade arriving at the facility's main entrance. Time had run out. After 15 years of anonymity, he would soon face the man who had built a career on his sacrifice, the man responsible for Catherine's death. Inside the executive restroom, Thorne worked with increased focus, aware that this space would certainly be used by Blackwood during the inspection. As he cleaned, his reflection caught his attention. The maintenance uniform, the carefully neutral expression, the deliberately stooped posture that minimized his true height and strength, the perfect disguise for a dead man. He straightened, allowing his true posture to emerge for a brief moment. Shoulders back, spine straight. The bearing of command visible in every line of his body. The transformation was startling, even to his own eyes. Not just a change in stance, but in presence, in authority. The door began to open. Instantly, Thorne resumed his janitor's posture, returning to the sink he was cleaning. A junior officer entered, barely glancing at him before using the facilities and leaving without washing his hands. The casual disregard was exactly what had protected Thorne's identity for so long. Invisibility had its advantages. As he completed his work, Thorne's phone vibrated with a text message. Another anonymous warning, Blackwood asking about you specifically. Be careful. He deleted it immediately, but the warning confirmed his suspicions. Blackwood knew. The question wasn't whether his cover was compromised, but what the Admiral planned to do with that knowledge. The facility's public address system crackled to life. Admiral Blackwood's inspection tour now proceeding to the command center. All department heads report for review. Thorne gathered his supplies, preparing to make himself scarce as the inspection procession approached. But as he opened the door, he found Lieutenant Nasser waiting in the corridor. Mr. Calloway, she said formally. Your presence is requested during the command center inspection. Ma'am, he questioned, genuine surprise breaking through his careful facade. Maintenance staff review, she explained, though her eyes communicated something deeper. Admiral's specific request. Understanding dawned cold and clear. This was no random inclusion. Blackwood was engineering a confrontation. Of course, ma'am, Thorne replied, falling into step behind her as they moved toward the command center. The large operational room buzzed with tense activity as they entered. Officers stood at rigid attention beside their stations, while Admiral Blackwood, a trim, silver-haired man with the hard eyes of a career politician, moved between them, asking pointed questions designed to reveal weakness. Thorne positioned himself near the maintenance closet, the perfect vantage point to observe, while remaining unremarkable. From this position, he could see every person in the room, every exit, every potential threat, habits from his former life that had never faded. Blackwood continued his inspection, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a man accustomed to deference. Captain Hargrove, explain the response time discrepancy in last month's readiness drill. As the facility director offered explanations, Blackwood's gaze swept the room, eventually landing on Thorne. For a microsecond, recognition flashed across the Admiral's face before being masked by professional indifference. But that brief moment confirmed everything. Blackwood knew exactly who stood in the janitor's uniform. The inspection continued with excruciating thoroughness, Blackwood finding fault with procedures, questioning decisions, and leaving nervous officers in his wake. Throughout, he never directly acknowledged Thorne, though his path through the command center methodically brought him closer to the maintenance closet. A test of nerve, Thorne recognized, waiting to see if the former commander would break cover, flee, or confront him. 15 years of discipline held Thorne in place, his expression revealing nothing as the Admiral approached. Finally, Blackwood stopped directly before him, close enough that only those nearest could hear their exchange. "Facilities maintenance, correct?" Blackwood asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Yes, sir," Thorne replied, keeping his gaze respectfully lowered, the perfect janitor's response. "How long have you served in this facility?" The word choice was deliberate, not worked, served. 8 years, sir," Thorne answered. "And before that?" Blackwood pressed. "Various positions, sir. Nothing notable." Blackwood's smile never reached his eyes. "I find that hard to believe, Mr. Calloway. Men with your attention to detail usually have interesting backgrounds." The threat lay just beneath the surface, an invitation to break, to reveal himself, to acknowledge their shared past. Thorne remained impassive. "Just doing my job, sir." Something dangerous flickered across Blackwood's expression. Frustration, perhaps, or the calculation of new strategy. Before he could continue, Captain Hargrove intervened. "Admiral, we should proceed to the Tactical Operations Center for the next phase of the inspection." Blackwood held Thorne's gaze a moment longer, before nodding. "Of course, Captain. Lead the way." As the inspection party moved toward the exit, Blackwood paused beside Lieutenant Nasser. "Lieutenant, I'd like you to compile a complete personnel file review, all staff, military and civilian, on my desk by 0800 tomorrow." "All staff, sir?" she questioned, glancing briefly toward Thorne. "Every single person in this facility," Blackwood confirmed, "especially long-term maintenance personnel, background checks, service records, everything." "Yes, sir," Nasser replied, her expression carefully neutral. Blackwood's intention was clear. If Thorne wouldn't break under direct pressure, perhaps the threat of exposure through official channels would force his hand. The Admiral departed with his entourage, leaving tension hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion. Once the command group had left, Lieutenant Nasser approached Thorne, keeping her voice low. "That was deliberate." Thorne continued organizing his maintenance supplies. "The Admiral is thorough." "He's targeting you specifically," she insisted. "I'm just a janitor, Lieutenant." Nasser's frustration showed in the tight line of her mouth. "We both know that's not true. Whatever history you have with Blackwood, it's coming to a head today." Thorne finally met her gaze directly. "Some histories are better left buried, Lieutenant. Safer for everyone involved." "He's going to expose you," she warned. "Then let him," Thorne replied with a calm that surprised even himself. "After 15 years, maybe it's time." As the day progressed, Thorne continued his duties, moving through the facility with practiced invisibility, while awareness of the Admiral's attention prickled along his spine. The inspection continued its methodical path through departments and divisions, Blackwood's criticism leaving shaken officers in its wake. During a brief lunch break, Thorne retreated to the maintenance office, checking his phone to find 3 missed calls from Emery's school. A voicemail revealed the reason? Emery had left campus without permission after receiving a text message. Concern flared as Thorne immediately called his son. No answer. He tried again, this time leaving a message. "Emery, call me, immediately. Whatever you received, whoever contacted you, don't trust it." His instincts, honed through decades of military operations, screamed warning. This was no teenage rebellion. The timing was too convenient. Someone was using Emery as leverage. Before he could make another call, the maintenance office door opened and Lieutenant Nasser entered, her expression grave. "Mr. Calloway, Admiral Blackwood has requested your presence at the final inspection briefing." "Why would he want maintenance staff present?" Thorne asked, though he already knew the answer. "He didn't specify," Nasser replied, "but he asked for you by name." The trap was closing. Blackwood had made his move, and now Thorne faced an impossible choice: maintain his cover and potentially lose Emery, or reclaim his true identity and face the consequences he'd been avoiding for 15 years. "I need to find my son first," he said, moving toward the door. Nasir blocked his path. "What's happened?" "He's missing. Left school after receiving a message." Understanding dawned in Nasir's eyes. "Blackwood?" "Possibly," Thorne acknowledged. "Or someone connected to what happened 15 years ago." "The same people responsible for your wife's death?" Thorne didn't confirm or deny, but his expression told Nasir everything she needed to know. "I'll help you," she decided. "But first, we need to deal with Blackwood. If you don't show up to this briefing, he'll have security looking for you within minutes." She was right, and Thorne knew it. "How long is the briefing?" "Scheduled for 30 minutes. After that, we can find Emery." Thorne checked his watch, calculating options with the strategic precision that had once made him one of the military's most valued commanders. 30 minutes, then I'm leaving, regardless of the consequences. The main conference room had been transformed for the inspection's closing briefing. Senior officers lined one side of the long table, while Admiral Blackwood and his staff occupied the other. Captain Hargrove stood at the head, prepared to receive the Admiral's assessment of the facility. Thorne entered behind Lieutenant Nasser, taking a position near the wall with other support staff. From this vantage point, he could observe the entire room while remaining relatively inconspicuous. Blackwood's gaze immediately found him, a predatory focus that made Thorne's combat instincts surge. The Admiral's confident smile suggested he held all the advantages, a dangerous misconception Thorne had exploited in many adversaries throughout his career. Captain Hargrove began the briefing with practiced formality. "Admiral Blackwood, on behalf of the entire Naval Special Warfare Command facility, we appreciate your thorough inspection today and look forward to your assessment." Blackwood rose, commanding the room with practiced authority. "Captain Hargrove, officers of the Naval Special Warfare Command, my inspection has revealed both strengths and concerning deficiencies in your operations." He proceeded to detail various shortcomings, from procedural inconsistencies to training inadequacies, each criticism landing like a calculated blow on the assembled officers. Throughout, his gaze repeatedly returned to Thorne, measuring his reaction. "However," Blackwood continued, "my primary concern involves personnel integrity and security protocol. It has come to my attention that this facility may be harboring individuals with undisclosed backgrounds and potentially compromised loyalties." The accusation hung in the air, drawing confused glances among the officers. "Would you care to elaborate, Admiral?" Captain Hargrove asked, tension evident in his voice. "Certainly," Blackwood replied. "I believe there are individuals within your facility using false or incomplete credentials to access classified areas and information." Lieutenant Nasser shifted uncomfortably beside Thorne, her hand moving subtly toward her sidearm, a protective gesture Thorne noticed but didn't acknowledge. Her instincts were good, identifying the escalating threat even without understanding its full scope. Thorne's phone vibrated in his pocket. With minimal movement, he checked the screen to find a text from an unknown number. "Dad, someone claiming to be your old colleague wants to meet. Says it's about Mom. What should I do?" Cold certainty settled in Thorne's chest. Emery was being used as bait, either by Blackwood directly or by someone connected to the events 15 years ago. Either way, his son was in danger while he stood trapped in this briefing. Blackwood continued his address, moving around the table with calculated precision that brought him closer to where Thorne stood. "In fact, I believe one such individual is in this room right now." Heads turned, officers glancing at each other with confusion and growing suspicion. Blackwood's path brought him directly in front of Thorne, close enough that his next words were heard primarily by those nearest. "Isn't that right, Mr. Calloway?" he asked, emphasizing the name with mocking respect. "Or, should I say, Major General?" The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward the unassuming janitor in gray coveralls. Thorne remained perfectly still, his expression revealing nothing, as 15 years of careful anonymity began to unravel. Before he could respond, the facility's security alert system blared to life, red warning lights pulsing as the automated announcement echoed through the room. "Security breach, main entrance, unknown individual with unauthorized access device. All security personnel respond." On the large display screen at the front of the conference room, security camera footage appeared, showing a teenage boy, Emery, being escorted through the main entrance by two men in dark suits. They are bearing unmistakably military despite their civilian attire. Thorne's focus narrowed instantly, all pretense of the humble janitor falling away as he assessed the tactical situation. Emery was inside the facility, brought there specifically to force Thorne's hand. Blackwood had orchestrated not just an exposure, but a hostage situation, using his own son. Admiral Blackwood watched Thorne's transformation with fascination. The subtle but unmistakable shift from maintenance worker to military commander happening before his eyes. "Recognizable, isn't he?" Blackwood remarked casually. "Your son has your bearing, General, though he lacks your talent for disappearing." Thorne met Blackwood's gaze directly, no longer bothering with the pretense of deference. "If he's harmed, there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in." The quiet statement carried more menace than any shouted threat, causing several nearby officers to step back involuntarily. Even Blackwood seemed momentarily taken aback by the sudden emergence of the man he'd believed long buried. "You disappeared after Catherine's death," Blackwood said, recovering quickly. "Let everyone believe you'd either died or abandoned your post. 15 years pushing a mop while I built a career on Hermes' fall. Did you think I wouldn't eventually find you?" "I knew you would," Thorne replied, his voice steady. "I just didn't think you'd drag my son into it." The security footage showed Emery and his escorts approaching the conference room, their progress tracked by increasingly concerned security officers who seemed uncertain how to respond to visitors clearly authorized by someone with high-level clearance. "He was never in danger," Blackwood stated, "just incentive for an overdue conversation." "Every second my son remains in custody is a debt you're accruing," Thorne warned. "Release him now, and we'll have whatever conversation you want." Lieutenant Nasser stepped forward, her hand still near her weapon. "Admiral, with respect, bringing a civilian minor into a secured military facility under false pretenses violates multiple regulations. I must insist." "Lieutenant," Blackwood interrupted sharply, "you've demonstrated concerning judgment in your investigation of classified operations beyond your clearance level. I suggest you stand down before you further compromise your career." The threat silenced Nasser, but her position beside Thorne made her allegiance clear to everyone in the room. The conference room door opened and Emery entered, flanked by the two suited men. The boy's eyes widened upon seeing his father, confusion evident in his expression. "Dad?" he questioned, taking in the tense scenario with remarkable composure. "What's happening?" "It's all right, Emery," Thorne assured him, his eyes never leaving Blackwood. "These men made a mistake bringing you here. They're going to escort you home now." "No one's going anywhere," Blackwood countered. "Not until we've resolved our unfinished business, General Calloway." The use of his rank and name sent ripples of shock through the assembled officers. Captain Hargrove stepped forward, confusion evident in his expression. "General, I don't understand, Admiral. This man is our maintenance supervisor." "This man," Blackwood replied with theatrical emphasis, "is Major General Thorne Calloway, former commander of Special Operations Task Force Hermes, architect of the most successful hostage extraction in naval history, and recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, presumed dead or AWOL for the past 15 years. The room erupted in whispers as officers processed this revelation. Thorne ignored them, his focus entirely on Emery, whose expression shifted from confusion to shock to something like dawning comprehension. "You're a general?" Emery asked, his voice small but steady. "Was," Thorne corrected gently. "The janitor thing? Was to keep you safe." Understanding passed between father and son, 15 years of secrets suddenly contextualized. Emery straightened his posture almost unconsciously, a gesture so reminiscent of his father's military bearing that several officers noted the resemblance with surprise. "Admiral," Captain Hargrove interjected, "regardless of Mr. Calloway's identity, bringing a civilian minor into this facility without proper authorization requires explanation." Blackwood waved away the concern. "A temporary measure to facilitate an important reunion. The boy was never in danger. The men who took me from school showed me pictures," Emery said suddenly, his voice carrying clearly through the tense room, "of Mom. They said they knew how she really died." The simple statement landed like an explosive in the center of the confrontation. Thorne's expression hardened as he turned back to Blackwood. You told him about Catherine? Not me personally, Blackwood replied, though his confidence seemed to waver slightly. My associates may have mentioned certain historical details to ensure his cooperation. Historical details, Thorne repeated, the words dangerously quiet. My wife's murder is a historical detail to you. Another wave of whispers passed through the room at the word murder. The official record had listed Catherine Calloway's death as a suspicious accident, never formally classified as homicide. Dad, Emery pressed, ignoring the tension surrounding them. They showed me police reports, said Mom was targeted because of something that happened during an operation. Something called Hermes Fall. Thorne's gaze never left Blackwood as he responded to his son. Your mother was killed because she discovered something she wasn't supposed to know. About an operation I commanded, about who really deserved credit for its success. That's a serious accusation, General, Blackwood warned, his hand moving subtly toward his jacket where, Thorne knew, he likely carried a concealed weapon. It's not an accusation, Thorne replied. It's a fact I've lived with for 15 years while watching you build a career on my strategy, my risk, and my team's sacrifice. The confrontation had reached its breaking point. Officers on both sides tensed, uncertain how to respond to the escalating situation. Lieutenant Nasser moved closer to Emery, positioning herself between the boy and Blackwood's associates in a subtle protective gesture. I think, Captain Hargrove interjected, attempting to defuse the situation, we should continue this discussion through proper channels. Admiral, I must insist that the civilian miner be removed from this secured facility immediately. Of course, Captain, Blackwood agreed smoothly, though his eyes never left Thorne. My associates will escort young Mr. Calloway home, after which I believe the General and I have much to discuss regarding his unauthorized access to classified facilities for the past 8 years. The threat was clear. Blackwood intended to use Thorne's deception against him, leveraging military regulations to neutralize whatever accusations might emerge about Catherine's death. Before anyone could move, the facility's communication system activated with an urgent message. Priority alert for Admiral Blackwood. SecNav on Secure Line 1. Immediate response required. The Secretary of the Navy, Blackwood's superior and political ally, calling during an inspection was unprecedented. The Admiral's expression tightened as he processed this unexpected development. Continue the briefing, Captain, he ordered, moving toward the secure communication station at the side of the conference room. This won't take long. As Blackwood stepped away, Thorne seized the moment to approach Emery, Lieutenant Nasser maintaining position beside them as a buffer against Blackwood's associates. Are you all right? Thorne asked quietly, assessing his son for any signs of mistreatment. I'm fine, Emery assured him. They said they were your old colleagues, that they needed my help to find you. His eyes searched his father's face. But you never left. You were just hiding in plain sight. The simple observation carried the weight of 15 years of deception. Necessary deception, but painful nonetheless. I'm sorry, Thorne said, the words inadequate for the magnitude of what his son had just learned. After your mother died, I made a choice. Disappear completely or risk losing you too. To him, Emery asked, glancing toward Admiral Blackwood, who spoke in hushed but increasingly agitated tones on the secure line. To the people behind him, Thorne clarified, the ones who needed the real story of Hermes' fall buried forever. Across the room, Admiral Blackwood slammed down the secure phone, his expression thunderous as he turned back toward the assembled officers. Whatever message he had received had clearly disrupted his carefully orchestrated confrontation. This inspection is concluded, he announced abruptly. Captain Hargrove, have my staff prepare departure protocols immediately. The sudden reversal caught everyone by surprise. Captain Hargrove stepped forward, confusion evident. Admiral, we haven't completed the final assessment or recommendations. They'll be delivered in writing, Blackwood replied tersely. My presence is required at Naval Command, effective immediately. His gaze found Thorne and Emery, calculation and barely concealed fury evident in his expression. Whatever had transpired during that brief communication had shifted the balance of power, and Blackwood clearly recognized it. This isn't over, General, he said quietly as he passed. 15 years is a long time to hide, but not long enough to escape accountability for desertion. Interesting perspective, Thorne replied evenly. I look forward to comparing notes on accountability, particularly regarding Catherine. Something dangerous flashed across Blackwood's face before he mastered it, turning away without further comment to join his departing staff. The conference room gradually emptied of officers, leaving only Thorne, Emery, Lieutenant Nasser, and Captain Hargrove. The facility director studied Thorne with new eyes, reassessing 8 years of interactions through the lens of this revelation. "I think," he said finally, "we have quite a lot to discuss, General Calloway." "Thorne is fine, Captain," he responded. "I haven't been a general for a very long time." "Nevertheless," Hargrove pressed, "if what Admiral Blackwood said is true, you've been living under false credentials while accessing a secured military facility for 8 years. "True," Thorne acknowledged. "A security breach I'm prepared to answer for." After, Lieutenant Nasser interjected, "We ensure Emery's safety and address the fact that a Navy admiral just used a civilian minor as leverage in what appears to be a personal vendetta." Captain Hargrove's expression suggested he recognized the validity of her point. "Mr. Calloway, or General, I suggest we continue this conversation in my office. Lieutenant Nasser, please escort Emery to the visitors' lounge and remain with him." "I'm staying with my dad," Emery stated firmly, his posture unconsciously mirroring Thorne's military bearing. Thorne placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "It's all right, Emery. Lieutenant Nasser will keep you safe while I explain some things to Captain Hargrove." "And then we talk?" Emery asked. "The whole truth this time?" Thorne nodded, the weight of 15 years of necessary deception evident in his expression. "Everything, I promise." As Lieutenant Nasser led Emery from the conference room, Captain Hargrove turned to Thorne with the air of a man reassessing everything he thought he knew. 8 years, he said, shaking his head. 8 years you've been cleaning my facility, and I never once suspected I was giving orders to a major general. "That was rather the point, Captain." Hargrove's expression hardened. "Before we go to my office, I need to know one thing. Are we in danger? Is whatever drove you underground 15 years ago still a threat to this facility or its personnel?" Thorne considered the question, weighing 15 years of vigilance against Blackwood's hasty retreat after that phone call. Something had changed in the equation, though he couldn't yet determine what. "Yes," he answered honestly. "As long as Admiral Blackwood holds power, the truth about Operation Hermes' fall remains dangerous, and he's not working alone." Hargrove absorbed this with military pragmatism. "Then I suggest we start at the beginning, General, because if my facility and personnel are at risk, I need to understand exactly what we're facing." In the security center across the facility, a technician monitored Admiral Blackwood's hasty departure, tracking his movement through the building via security cameras. As the Admiral reached the main entrance, he paused, turning to look directly into the nearest camera. His expression contained a clear message for whoever might be watching. This isn't over. The technician, unsettled by the direct gaze, switched to the external cameras to track the Admiral's motorcade as it pulled away from the facility. On another monitor, footage showed Thorne Calloway, now revealed as Major General Calloway, walking beside Captain Hargrove toward the administrative offices, his posture noticeably transformed. No longer the invisible janitor, but a commander returning to the light after 15 years in shadow. How far would you go to protect the people you love? Have you ever had to hide your true identity or abilities to keep others safe? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to discover what happens when a forgotten hero finally steps back into the light. Captain Hargrove's office reflected its occupant, organized, austere, and focused on function rather than comfort. The facility director sat behind his desk, fingers steepled as he processed everything Thorne had just revealed. For the past hour, Thorne Calloway had methodically reconstructed the events of 15 years ago, his voice steady as he navigated the classified details of Operation Hermes' fall and its aftermath. "Let me ensure I understand correctly," Hargrove said, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "You designed and commanded the operation that rescued the ambassador's family from insurgents." "Yes," Thorne confirmed. "Admiral Blackwood, then a captain, was stationed at headquarters and had minimal involvement in tactical planning." "Correct. He was the communications liaison between command and my team on the ground. Yet after the operation succeeded, official records were altered to credit Blackwood with the strategic framework that saved those hostages." Thorne nodded once. "By the time my team returned from deployment, the narrative had already been established. Blackwood as the brilliant strategist, me as the field commander who executed his plan. And you didn't contest this? I filed reports containing the factual sequence of events. They were classified, then buried. Hargrove leaned forward. Then your wife discovered something. The shift in Thorne's expression was subtle but unmistakable, a tightening around the eyes, a momentary rigidity in his posture. Catherine worked in military intelligence analysis. She was reviewing operational patterns to develop improved tactical responses for hostage situations. Hermes' fall was her case study. She found discrepancies in the official record, Hargrove concluded. She found the original planning documents carrying my signature, alongside communications proving Blackwood had minimal input. She also found evidence that certain operations funds had been diverted through unofficial channels. Money? Power has many currencies, Captain. Blackwood was building political capital, positioning himself for advancement. The Hermes operation became his foundation myth, the brilliant strategy that saved American lives against impossible odds. And your wife threatened that narrative. Thorne's hands, resting on the arms of his chair, tightened almost imperceptibly. Catherine believed in accountability. When she discovered the discrepancies, she followed protocol and reported up the chain of command. To Blackwood's superiors, Hargrove realized. To the people who had approved his advancement based on Hermes. People who would be implicated if the truth emerged. The implication hung heavy between them. Captain Hargrove, a career military officer, understood the politics of advancement, the alliances and favors that often shaped careers alongside merit and achievement. 3 days after she filed her report, Thorne continued, Catherine's car was forced off the road returning from her office. The official investigation ruled it an accident with suspicious circumstances, but without sufficient evidence to pursue as homicide. But you knew. I received a warning the morning after her death, anonymous, untraceable. It simply read, "She saw too much. The boy will too, unless you disappear." Understanding dawned in Hargrove's expression. Emery. He was 2 years old, Thorne said, the first crack of emotion appearing in his steady recounting. I had a choice, pursue justice for Catherine and risk my son becoming collateral damage, or disappear and keep him safe. So Major General Thorne Calloway died without dying. Military records show I was placed on extended leave following my wife's death, then resigned my commission 6 months later. My service record was classified under national security provisions, effectively erasing me from public record. And the janitor was born, Hargrove concluded. After 5 years moving between temporary identities, yes. I established enough background as a civilian maintenance worker to secure employment here. Close enough to monitor Blackwood's career advancement, but invisible beneath his notice. Until today, Thorne nodded. Until today. The facility director rose, moving to the window that overlooked the main courtyard. Below, Admiral Blackwood's motorcade had departed, but the disruption of his visit lingered in the heightened security and unusual personnel movements. Why here? Hargrove asked suddenly. Of all places, why seek employment at the very facility where Blackwood regularly conducts inspections? Keep your friends close, Thorne replied simply. And your enemies under surveillance, Hargrove finished, understanding. For 15 years, you've been watching the man who destroyed your life, all while cleaning his conference rooms. I've been protecting my son, Thorne corrected. Blackwood was secondary. Hargrove turned back from the window, reassessing the man before him. No longer the unassuming janitor, but not quite the decorated commander either. Something between worlds. What happens now? He asked. Blackwood knows you're here, knows you're alive. Whatever protection your anonymity provided is gone. Now I protect Emery more directly, Thorne answered, and perhaps it's time certain truth saw daylight. A sharp knock interrupted them as Lieutenant Nasser entered without waiting for permission, her expression tight with urgency. Captain, we have a situation, she announced. Admiral Blackwood's motorcade has returned to the facility. He's demanding access to all personnel files and security recordings from the past decade. Hargrove straightened. On what authority? National security concerns, Nasser replied. He's claiming General Calloway's unauthorized presence constitutes a significant breach requiring immediate investigation. Conveniently eliminating evidence of his own actions in the process, Thorne observed. He's brought a team from Naval Intelligence, Nasser continued. They're setting up in the East Wing conference room now. The Admiral has also requested, she paused, glancing at Thorne, that Maintenance Supervisor Calloway be detained for questioning. Hargrove's jaw tightened. Where is Emery? Secure in the visitors' lounge with 2 of our security officers. The Admiral doesn't know I moved him from the original location. Good, Thorne said, rising from his chair. Keep him there until we resolve this. Resolved how? Hargrove questioned. Blackwood outranks everyone in this facility. If he's invoking national security protocols, my options are limited. You're assuming this remains an internal military matter, Thorne replied. It doesn't. Before he could elaborate, his phone vibrated with an incoming call. The screen displayed a number he hadn't seen in 15 years. He answered, keeping his voice neutral. Calloway. General, came the response, formal and clipped. Secretary Harmon, Department of Defense, I understand you've resurfaced. Thorne met Hargrove and Nazir's curious gazes as he responded. Not by choice, Mr. Secretary. Indeed, Admiral Blackwood's actions today have forced several hands, yours among them. I've dispatched a de-investigative team to your location. They'll arrive within the hour. Until then, I need you to remain visible but unengaged with Blackwood's personnel. Understood. My son's safety is my priority. Already addressed, the Secretary replied. A protection detail has been assigned to Emery Calloway effective immediately. The situation that necessitated your disappearance 15 years ago is being reevaluated at the highest levels. The call ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Thorne to process this unexpected development. The sudden involvement of the Secretary of Defense suggested forces beyond Blackwood were now in play, forces that had perhaps been watching from the shadows as Thorne himself had done for 15 years. Friends in high places? Hargrove asked, noting Thorne's expression. Old connections, Thorne corrected. It seems Blackwood's move today disturbed more than just my cover. Lieutenant Nasser checked her tactical watch. Admiral Blackwood will expect a response to his detention request within 10 minutes per protocol. Then let's not disappoint him, Thorne decided. Captain, I believe it's time for the facility's former commanding general to formally inspect the East Wing conference room, don't you? Understanding dawned in Hargrove's expression, followed by the first hint of something approaching satisfaction. I believe that's an excellent suggestion, General Calloway. Lieutenant Nasser, please escort the general. I'll inform Admiral Blackwood that his request is being processed through appropriate channels. As they moved toward the door, Hargrove added, And Calloway, I believe this inspection calls for appropriate attire. Lieutenant, the formal uniform display in Section 3 should have something suitable. Thorne paused, the implication clear. After 15 years in maintenance coveralls, he would face Blackwood as what he truly was, a Major General of the United States military. Captain, I resigned my commission, he reminded Hargrove. Did you? Hargrove responded, already accessing personnel files on his secure terminal. According to records I'm currently reviewing, Major General Thorne Calloway was placed on special assignment status following personal tragedy. His resignation paperwork appears to have been misplaced in administrative processing. The facility director looked up, a rare smile crossing his features. Bureaucracy works in mysterious ways, General. 20 minutes later, Admiral Blackwood paced the East Wing conference room, irritation evident in every line of his body. Around him, his hastily assembled investigative team established workstations, preparing to comb through the facility's personnel records and security footage. Captain Hargrove is deliberately stalling, Blackwood snapped at his aide. He knows exactly where Calloway is. Yes, sir, the aide acknowledged. Security reports the janitor was last seen entering the captain's office over an hour ago. He's not a janitor, Blackwood corrected sharply. He's a decommissioned officer using false credentials to access classified facilities. I want him, located and detained immediately. The conference room door opened and Captain Hargrove entered alone, his posture formal. Admiral Blackwood, he acknowledged, I understand you've requested access to our personnel files. Among other things, Blackwood replied coldly, including the immediate detention of your maintenance supervisor. Regarding Mr. Calloway, Hargrove said carefully, there seems to be some confusion about his current status. There's no confusion, Blackwood countered. He's a former officer who has been operating under false pretenses within a secured military installation. That constitutes a serious security breach. I agree completely, Hargrove nodded, which is why I've asked him to report here directly. In fact, he glanced at his watch. He should be arriving momentarily to address your concerns personally. Before Blackwood could respond, the conference room door opened once more. Lieutenant Nasser entered first, coming to attention as she announced formally, Admiral Blackwood, Captain Hargrove, presenting Major General Thorne Calloway, United States Navy, Special Operations Command. The room fell silent as Thorne entered, no longer in maintenance coveralls, but dressed in the full formal uniform of a two-star general. The transformation was startling, the stooped posture replaced by military straightness, the deferential expression gone, revealing the natural authority he had suppressed for 15 years. Every officer in the room, conditioned by years of military protocol, came instinctively to attention. Only Blackwood remained seated, his face draining of color as the reality of what was unfolding dawned on him. Admiral Blackwood, Thorne acknowledged, his voice carrying the natural command presence he had hidden for so long. I understand you have questions about my presence in this facility. Blackwood recovered quickly, rising to face this new challenge. This theatrical display doesn't change the facts, Calloway. You resigned your commission 15 years ago. That uniform doesn't belong to you anymore. A common misconception, Thorne replied evenly. One I shared until recently. Captain Hargrove has discovered some interesting discrepancies in my personnel file. What discrepancies? Blackwood demanded. Captain Hargrove stepped forward, tablet in hand. According to Naval Personnel Command records, Major General Calloway was placed on special assignment status following personal tragedy. His resignation was never formally processed. That's impossible, Blackwood insisted. I personally confirmed his separation from service. Did you? Thorne asked quietly. Or did you simply ensure my name disappeared from active duty rosters? Two very different processes, Admiral. The implication hung in the air between them, that Blackwood had orchestrated Thorne's removal from military records without actually processing the formal resignation that would have been traceable. This is absurd, Blackwood declared, turning to his investigative team. I want complete verification of Calloway's service record, including formal separation documentation. Already in progress, sir, his aide reported. However, we're encountering unusual security blocks in the personnel database. Override them, Blackwood ordered. We can't, sir. The blocks require secretary-level authorization. Understanding dawned in Blackwood's expression, followed by the first flicker of genuine concern. Who have you contacted, Calloway? He demanded. I haven't contacted anyone, Thorne replied truthfully. But it seems my reappearance has activated certain protocols established long ago. The conference room door opened once more, admitting a team of stern-faced individuals in dark suits, their Department of Defense credentials prominently displayed. Admiral Blackwood, the lead investigator announced, I'm Special Agent Rivera with the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. We're here to secure this facility pending investigation of potential misconduct related to Operation Hermes Fall and subsequent events. Blackwood's composure visibly faltered. On whose authority? Secretary of Defense Harmon, Rivera replied, presenting official documentation. Additionally, I have orders to escort you to Washington for immediate questioning regarding the death of Catherine Calloway and the subsequent manipulation of military records. The conference room erupted in tense murmurs as officers processed this extraordinary development. Blackwood's face flushed with anger and something else, the first traces of fear. This is outrageous, he protested. Calloway has been operating under false credentials for years. He's the one who should be detained. General Calloway's status is being addressed separately, Rivera responded, unmoved. Our immediate concern is securing evidence related to the allegations against you, which include obstruction of justice, falsification of military records, misappropriation of operational funds, and potential involvement in the death of a military intelligence analyst. As Rivera continued outlining the investigation parameters, Thorne caught Lieutenant Nasser's subtle signal from the doorway. She indicated the corridor with a slight tilt of her head. Stepping away from the increasingly heated exchange, Thorne found Emery waiting outside, flanked by two plainclothes security officers. The boy, No, young man, Thorne corrected himself, stared at his father in the general's uniform, processing this final confirmation of everything he'd learned today. Is it true? Emery asked quietly. Everything they're saying about you? Thorne nodded, studying his son's face for signs of anger or rejection. Yes. And Mom? She was really murdered? Yes, Thorne confirmed, the word carrying 15 years of suppressed grief. To protect powerful men from the truth she discovered. Emery absorbed this, his expression moving through confusion and pain, before settling into something harder, more determined. That's why you disappeared, why you became someone else. To keep you safe, Thorne confirmed. As long as the people responsible for your mother's death believed I was gone, no longer a threat to their narrative, they would leave us alone. And now? Emery asked, glancing toward the conference room, where raised voices indicated the confrontation was escalating. Now the truth is finally emerging, Thorne replied, and you're old enough to understand it, to decide what you want to do with it. Before Emery could respond, Lieutenant Nasser approached. General, Admiral Blackwood is being formally detained. The DoD team has requested your presence for preliminary statements. Thorne nodded, turning back to his son. Wait for me in Captain Hargrove's office. This won't take long. I want to stay, Emery insisted. I want to see him, the man responsible for what happened to us. Thorne recognized the determination in his son's eyes, Catherine's determination, the same unyielding pursuit of truth that had ultimately cost her life. He looked to Nasser, who nodded her understanding. I'll keep him in the observation area, she promised. He'll see everything without being directly involved. Thank you, Lieutenant, Thorne acknowledged, straightening his uniform before re-entering the conference room. Inside, the situation had deteriorated further. Admiral Blackwood stood rigidly as DoD agents cataloged and secured his personal items and electronic devices. His face was a mask of controlled fury, though beneath it, Thorne recognized the calculation of a man assessing escape routes. This witch hunt is based on unfounded accusations from a disgraced officer, Blackwood was insisting to Agent Rivera. Calloway abandoned his post 15 years ago. Whatever conspiracy theory he's constructed since then has no basis in fact. Thorne stepped forward, drawing all eyes in the room. Is that your official position, Admiral? That Operation Hermes Fall proceeded exactly as the current records indicate? Of course, Blackwood replied coldly. Those records were submitted and verified by multiple officers. Interesting, Thorne observed. Considering the DoD has just unsealed my original after-action report from Hermes Fall, the one that mysteriously disappeared from official records. The statement was a calculated gamble. Thorne had no way of knowing what evidence the DoD had recovered, but Blackwood's reaction would be telling. The Admiral's expression flickered, a momentary break in his confident facade. Any report contradicting the official record would be fabrication, created after the fact to salvage your reputation. My report was submitted through proper channels within 48 hours of mission completion, Thorne countered. It detailed the actual planning sequence, operational command decisions, and included communications logs showing exactly who designed the extraction strategy. Communications can be altered, Blackwood dismissed. True, Thorne acknowledged, which is why I encrypted my original files with a personal algorithm and stored backup copies with trusted individuals. Insurance, you might say, against exactly this scenario. The room fell silent as the implications settled. Even Blackwood's investigative team exchanged uncertain glances, clearly reassessing their position in the unfolding drama. Agent Rivera stepped forward. Admiral Blackwood, in light of potentially conflicting evidence, will need to expand our investigation to include all communication records related to Operation Hermes Fall. Additionally, we'll be reopening the investigation into Catherine Calloway's death with full resources. Blackwood's composure finally cracked. This is a coordinated attack on my reputation by a man who couldn't accept being passed over for advancement. Calloway has nursed this grudge for 15 years while hiding like a coward. Is that what you think this is about? Thorne asked quietly. Advancement? Recognition? What else? Blackwood countered. You couldn't stand that your operation became the foundation of my career rather than yours. Thorne shook his head, genuine sadness replacing anger. I never cared about who received credit for Hermes' fall. The operation succeeded, hostages rescued, minimal casualties, mission accomplished. That was enough. Then why this charade? Blackwood demanded. Why emerge now with these accusations? Because you killed my wife, Thorne stated simply. The words hung in the air, unadorned by emotion, yet carrying the weight of absolute conviction. Not with your hands, perhaps, but on your orders. Because she discovered the truth about Hermes, about the diverted funds, about the manufactured narrative that built your career. You have no proof, Blackwood insisted, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. I didn't 15 years ago, Thorne acknowledged, so I made a choice. Pursue justice without sufficient evidence and risk my son becoming another casualty, or disappear completely, keeping Emery safe while I gathered what was needed. For 15 years? Blackwood scoffed. Pushing a mop while I built a distinguished career? You misunderstand, Thorne replied calmly. I wasn't hiding from you, Admiral. I was hiding my son from the people behind you, the ones who actually gave the order regarding Catherine, the same people who've been watching you build that distinguished career on falsified achievements and diverted funds. Understanding dawned in Blackwood's expression, followed by the first genuine fear. What have you done, Calloway? Exactly what Catherine would have done, Thorne answered. Followed the evidence wherever it led. The difference is, I had 15 years and the protection of complete anonymity to do it thoroughly. Agent Rivera stepped forward, clearly intrigued by this exchange. General Calloway, are you suggesting there's a broader conspiracy beyond Admiral Blackwood's actions? I'm stating it explicitly, Thorne confirmed. Admiral Blackwood was ambitious but junior 15 years ago. He lacked the authority to independently reclassify operations records or suppress investigations into suspicious deaths. Those actions required higher approval. Names, General, Rivera pressed. In due time, Thorne promised. My evidence has been securely stored for 15 years, updated continuously as I gathered new connections. It will be provided through appropriate channels once my son's safety is fully secured. Throughout this exchange, Blackwood had grown increasingly pale, the implications of Thorne's methodical investigation clearly disturbing his calculated composure. You've been watching me, he realized. All these years, cleaning my conference rooms, present during classified briefings, you heard everything. Not just heard, Thorne corrected. Documented, correlated, connected to financial records, promotional patterns, operational decisions that benefited specific interests. The admission silenced the room. Officers who had arrived as part of Blackwood's investigative team now stood uncertain, clearly reassessing their positions in this rapidly shifting landscape. Agent Rivera broke the tension, issuing clipped orders to his team. Secure all communications devices and records. No one leaves until preliminary statements are complete. Turning to Thorne, he added, General Calloway, we'll need your full cooperation in this investigation. You'll have it, Thorne assured him. Starting with the complete file I've maintained on Admiral Blackwood's activities since assuming command of the Pacific Fleet 3 years ago. Blackwood lunged forward suddenly, his composure finally shattering. You self-righteous bastard! You've been playing janitor while systematically undermining everything I've built. Two agents quickly restrained the Admiral, preventing him from reaching Thorne. Not undermining, Thorne corrected calmly. Just documenting. The truth does its own undermining when finally revealed. As Blackwood was escorted from the conference room, his final glare promised retribution. Thorne met it steadily, neither triumphant nor angry, merely resolved, like a man completing a mission long in execution. Captain Hargrove approached once the Admiral had been removed. I believe we've all significantly underestimated our maintenance supervisor. A common occurrence, Thorne acknowledged. Invisibility has its advantages. What happens now? Hargrove asked. Now the formal investigations begin, Thorne replied. Statements, evidence review, reconstruction of events from 15 years ago. The machinery of accountability grinding slowly but thoroughly. And you? Will Major General Calloway be resuming his commission? Thorne glanced toward the observation window where Emery watched, his expression a complex mixture of pride, confusion, and lingering shock. My most important role has never been general, he answered. It's been father. That remains my priority. As the DoD team continued securing the conference room, Thorne excused himself, moving to join Emery in the corridor. Lieutenant Nasser stood nearby, maintaining a respectful distance while ensuring their privacy. Are you all right? Thorne asked his son. Emery studied him, taking in the uniform, the insignia, the decorations that told a story of distinguished service Thorne had never shared. "You're actually him," Emery said finally. "Major General Thorne Calloway, the guy in those classified files I found. The war hero." "I was," Thorne acknowledged, "a lifetime ago. But you gave it all up, your rank, your reputation, everything, because of me." "For you," Thorne corrected gently. "There's a difference." Emery absorbed this distinction, processing its implications. All these years, working as a janitor, being invisible, wasn't that hard? Knowing who you really were? Thorne considered the question carefully. "Identity isn't just rank or title, Emery. I never stopped being who I am, just adapted how that identity appeared to others." "But they treated you like nothing," Emery persisted. "I saw how those officers spoke to you, how they didn't even notice you most of the time." "Their perception was their limitation, not mine," Thorne replied. "I knew my purpose, my mission. Their dismissal just made it easier to execute." Lieutenant Nasser approached, interrupting their conversation. "General, Captain Hargrove suggests moving to a more secure location. The facility is locking down for the investigation, and media have already gathered at the main gate." Thorne nodded, checking his watch. "Has the DoD established their security perimeter?" "Yes, sir," Nasser confirmed. "They have requested you remain available but have approved temporary relocation to secured housing." "Our apartment?" Emery asked. "No longer secure," Thorne explained. "Once Blackwood identified me, that location was compromised." The reality of their situation seemed to finally register with Emery. The life they had built over 15 years was ending, transformed by the day's revelations. His expression reflected the uncertainty of this transition. "What happens to us now?" he asked. "We adapt," Thorne answered simply, "as we've always done." 3 days later, Thorne stood at the window of their temporary quarters on the naval base, watching as Emery spoke with a DoD education liaison about accelerated college applications. The events at the facility had triggered a cascade of official responses. Investigations launched, records unsealed, protective details assigned. Catherine's case had been formally reopened, with preliminary findings already supporting what Thorne had known for 15 years. Her death was no accident, but a deliberate silencing. Admiral Blackwood remained in custody, facing multiple charges as investigators worked backward through his career, unraveling fabrications and following financial trails to higher-placed co-conspirators. A knock at the door interrupted Thorne's reflections. Lieutenant Nasser entered, carrying a garment bag. "Captain Hargrove thought you might need these," she said, laying the bag across a chair. "Official reinstatement proceedings begin tomorrow." "I haven't decided if I'm accepting reinstatement," Thorne replied. Nasser studied him with the perceptive gaze that had first noticed inconsistencies in the janitor's behavior. "With respect, sir, I think you made that decision when you put on the uniform 3 days ago." Thorne smiled slightly, acknowledging her insight. "Perhaps. But Emery's future remains my priority. MIT has already offered early admission with full scholarship, pending security clearance adjustments." "He seems to be adapting well," Nasser observed, glancing toward the young man, who now gestured animatedly as he discussed advanced physics programs. "He's his mother's son," Thorne said simply. "Resilient, brilliant, determined to understand the world as it actually is, not as others present it." "And his father's son," Nasser added. "I've watched him these past days. He stands differently now, observes before speaking, considers angles others miss. He's been learning from you his entire life, whether he knew your background or not." The observation struck Thorne deeply, the realization that despite his carefully constructed janitor identity, he had still shaped his son in fundamental ways. The precision, the analytical thinking, the quiet dignity in the face of challenge, all qualities Thorne had maintained even while pushing a mop through military corridors. "Lieutenant," he said finally, "thank you for seeing what others missed." "That's my job, sir," she replied with a slight smile, "though I should have connected the dots sooner. The way you positioned your cleaning cart during tactical discussions alone should have been a giveaway." This drew a genuine laugh from Thorne, perhaps his first in days. Old habits, 15 years as a janitor never quite erased 30 years of tactical training. "The facility staff is still processing everything," Nasser continued, finding out their maintenance supervisor was actually a decorated major general all along. Some are embarrassed by how they treated you. They treated me exactly as I needed them to, Thorne corrected. Their dismissal was my cover. Still, Nasser pressed, Commander Ellis has requested permission to formally apologize for his conduct. Unnecessary, Thorne dismissed, though his face when I walked into that conference room in uniform was apology enough. Their conversation was interrupted as Emery joined them, excitement evident in his expression. Dad, MIT wants me to start next semester. They're creating a special security protocol for my housing and classes. That's excellent news, Thorne replied, genuine pride warming his voice. And they asked about you, Emery continued, whether you might consider a visiting lecturer position in the tactical operations. Apparently, your approach to the Hermes extraction is already being taught in their advanced systems modeling program. Thorne raised an eyebrow, surprised by this development. A lecturer? Perfect cover for staying close while I'm in school, Emery pointed out with a knowing smile. Though I guess you won't be pushing any mops this time. The simple observation carried layers of meaning. Acknowledgement of their shared past and altered future. Recognition of Thorne's sacrifice, and Emery's newfound understanding of it. Lieutenant Nasser excused herself tactfully, leaving father and son to process this potential new chapter in their lives. Would you consider it? Emery asked once they were alone. Teaching instead of cleaning? Thorne moved to the window, gazing out at the naval facility where his two lives had finally converged. I never saw maintenance work as beneath me, Emery. Every role has purpose when performed with intention. I know, Emery acknowledged, but for 15 years, you lived beneath your capabilities, hid your knowledge and skills, accepted disrespect and invisibility. All for me. With purpose, Thorne corrected. That makes all the difference. They stood in comfortable silence, the bond between them transformed but strengthened by recent revelations. After a moment, Emery spoke again, his voice carrying the thoughtful quality Thorne recognized from Catherine. When those officers find out their janitor was actually a war hero all along, a major general who could have ended their careers with a word, but who chose to clean their mess and protect them anyway, that changes how they see everything, doesn't it? Thorne considered his son's insight. Perhaps, though the lesson isn't about my rank or what I gave up. It's about seeing people for who they truly are, not just the role they appear to fill. Like seeing the general behind the janitor's cart, Emery suggested, or seeing the intelligence analyst behind the maintenance supervisor, came a new voice from the doorway. They turned to find Captain Hargrove standing there, accompanied by a distinguished older man in civilian attire whom Thorne immediately recognized. Secretary of Defense Harmon. General Calloway, the secretary greeted him formally. Your country owes you a debt we can never fully repay, both for your service before and for the sacrifice of these past 15 years. Thorne straightened instinctively, the soldier's response to authority ingrained despite years of practiced invisibility. Mr. Secretary, the investigation is expanding as you predicted, Harmon continued. Admiral Blackwood was merely the visible edge of a much deeper problem. Your documentation has proven invaluable in mapping the network behind him. Catherine identified the pattern 15 years ago, Thorne noted. I merely followed it to its source. While pushing a mop and raising your son, the secretary acknowledged, extraordinary dedication, General. Harmon moved further into the room, studying both Thorne and Emery with evident interest. The official narrative is being prepared now. Your full reinstatement to active duty, backdated with appropriate compensations, followed by whatever position you wish to pursue. The President has authorized me to offer several options, including academic posting, if you prefer to remain close to your son during his studies. The offer hung in the air, representing not just career rehabilitation, but official acknowledgement of 15 years of invisible service and sacrifice. And Catherine? Thorne asked, the question that mattered most. Her case has been prioritized at the highest level, Harmon assured him. Preliminary findings already support reclassification as homicide. The investigators believe charges will be filed within weeks. 15 years of patient vigilance culminating in this moment, the truth emerging, justice approaching, his son's future secured. Thorne felt a weight lifting that he had carried for so long, he'd forgotten its constant pressure. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, he said simply. As the officials departed, Emery turned to his father. You did it, Dad. Everything you worked for all these years. We did it, Thorne corrected. Your resilience made my mission possible." 1 week later, Thorne Calloway walked the corridors of the Naval Special Warfare Command facility for the last time, no longer in janitor's coveralls nor in full military dress, but in the simple uniform of a naval officer on administrative duty, a transitional role while his future path took shape. Officers who passed him now saluted with the respect due his rank, many still processing the revelation that the maintenance supervisor they had overlooked for years had been a decorated major general conducting the longest deep cover operation in naval history. He paused at the main corridor junction, the location where he had first encountered Admiral Blackwood during that fateful inspection. The memory of that confrontation, the moment when 15 years of careful anonymity had finally ended, felt simultaneously recent and distant, like viewing past events through water. Lieutenant Nasser found him there, her approach now accompanied by the formal acknowledgement of his rank. "General Calloway, your transport is ready whenever you are." "Thank you, Lieutenant," he replied, his gaze still fixed on the corridor where his two lives had collided. "The facility won't be the same without you, sir," she added, genuine respect in her voice, "though I suspect the floors won't be quite as immaculate." Thorne smiled at this, the simple acknowledgement of work well done, regardless of its perceived status. "Some habits remain, Lieutenant. I find proper maintenance essential in any operation." As they walked toward the main entrance, Thorne noticed his reflection in the polished glass of a display case, no longer stooped in practiced invisibility, nor rigid with military bearing, but something balanced between those extremes, a man integrated rather than divided. Outside, Emery waited beside their transport vehicle, engaged in animated conversation with Captain Hargrove. The boy, young man, Thorne corrected himself again, had grown perceptibly in the weeks since the revelation, standing straighter, observing more carefully, processing the world with newfound awareness of its complexities. Catherine would have been proud of him, of them both. "Ready, Dad?" Emery asked as Thorne approached. "Almost," he replied, turning back for one final look at the facility where he had spent 8 years in voluntary invisibility. "Just saying goodbye." Captain Hargrove extended his hand. "The Secretary's offer still stands, General. A position here whenever you're ready to return." "Thank you, Captain," Thorne acknowledged. "But I believe my next mission lies elsewhere." As they drove away from the facility, Emery studied his father's profile. "You'll miss it, won't you? Not the cleaning, but being there, observing everything, knowing what's happening." "There are different ways to serve, different forms of vigilance," Thorne replied. "I've learned that lesson thoroughly these past 15 years." "The major general who became a janitor," Emery mused, "and now becomes a professor." "Not becomes," Thorne corrected gently. "Adapts. The core remains the same, just expressed differently according to mission requirements." The distinction resonated between them, the understanding that identity transcended role, that purpose defined worth more than position or recognition. As they approached the gates of the naval base, a guard detail came to attention, offering a formal salute to the departing general. Thorne returned it with the precision that 15 years of janitorial work had never diminished. Behind them, the facility where Admiral Blackwood had once commanded inspections now served as headquarters for an expanding investigation into military corruption. Before them stretched a future neither had imagined possible just weeks before. Emery to MIT, Thorne to a visiting professorship that would keep him nearby while allowing his tactical expertise to shape a new generation of strategic thinkers. And beneath it all, like a foundation finally revealed after years buried beneath accumulated debris, the promise of justice for Catherine, the truth she had discovered at the cost of her life, finally emerging into daylight. "What do you think Mom would say?" Emery asked quietly. "If she could see us now?" Thorne considered the question, remembering Catherine's unflinching commitment to truth, regardless of consequence. "She'd say we did exactly what was needed, no more, no less." "Even the 15 years pushing a mop?" "Especially those years," Thorne confirmed, "because they kept you safe while the truth gathered strength." The transport cleared the final security checkpoint, carrying them toward their temporary housing before the move to Massachusetts. As the naval base receded in the distance, Thorne felt not regret for the years spent in anonymity, but satisfaction in their purpose. The janitor who had moved invisibly through corridors of power, gathering evidence one floor polish at a time. The father who had sacrificed recognition to preserve his son's safety. The soldier who had never stopped serving merely changed his uniform to match the mission. In the polished side mirror, Thorne caught a final glimpse of the naval facility growing smaller behind them. For a moment, the reflection seemed to shift. The janitor with his mop, the general with his stars, the father with his son, all overlapping, all aspects of the same man. Not separate identities, but a single life lived with unwavering purpose. Have you ever witnessed someone step out of the shadows to reveal their true identity or capabilities? Someone who sacrificed recognition to protect what mattered most to them? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to honor those quiet heroes whose greatest achievements often remain unseen.